This is going live and we will get started in just 1 or 2 minutes. So if you haven't grabbed your coffee and microphone set up. All right, now we will be ready to go. We've got the microphone set. We will be back in 1 or 2 minutes. So grab your coffee, paper, whatever you need, and we will be back shortly. All right, I think we've got everything running the way it's supposed to. I am Becky Amble, and welcome to Ready, Set, Grow. This is our first session, and we're starting over. We have done this before, and after our 3-month period, we took a little break, and now we're back. The program runs for 3 months. This is free content for pretty much any business owner or leader that is interested in ideas on how to grow and increase profits in your business. This is generally put together with the intention that this is for companies that are doing 5 million or less in revenue per year. Just double checking everything looks like it's working here. And you saw the cover screen, hopefully, and you are ready to go. Let's talk very briefly about getting started here. Whoops, let me get to the share. There we go. So starting off, here's our agenda, and I'm not exactly sure why the screen is a little bit goofy. Let's see if I can fix that. Here. There, I think we're okay now. Alrighty, so welcome to Ready, Set, Grow. Like I said, I am Becky Amble, and I will be sharing some ideas with you over the next 3 months. We've got a weekly session every Monday at 9, as you've probably figured out. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. And this is our first session as we're getting restarted. We're going to start with some kinesiology, and we're going to talk about where we are in this whole process and why do I do this. We'll talk about some tools you can use, and we're going to talk about business success and failure. We will talk about the model that we will be using for the next 3 months and share a mind map, and then we will wrap up. So as you can see, the first thing we want to do is our kinesiology. I'm going to stop the share so you can maybe see me a little bit better. And why do we do kinesiology? Well, it's a technique to connect both hemispheres of our brain and better engage us in anything that we're doing. In this case, I use it because I want to be able to learn more. And when I've got both hemispheres of my brain engaged, right and left brain, obviously that works better. And that's the whole idea. And I'm not one of those that does a lot of jazzy music and jumping and dancing and that kind of stuff, at least at this point. So what I would ask that you do is, as you are able, please stand up. And we're going to do first, hopefully you can see good enough here. We're going to do first what's called a crisscross. This is to take the opposite elbow to the opposite knee. So let's do that. You do 10 of those. And if you're unable to stand or unable to lift your knees this high, just tap with alternate hand to the opposite knee. And if you're sitting, that's okay too. This just engages our brain, and I use this when I have to do creative work, or even if I feel like I've gotten fatigued during the day and I just need to get back in gear. All right, the next one is put your hands together. This is called a figure eight. So put your hands together and you make a figure eight. And we do a few of those. All right, then the other one that seems to be the most confusing is put the back of your hands together. Link your fingers, and you kind of push your hands out in front of you and then bring them back in. There, can you see that? Okay, so back of hands together, link the fingers, push out, bring them together. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to get the fingers linking and all that stuff. That's okay. Just do the best you can. Push out, pull back, and there you have it. Now, there's another way that you can engage both hemispheres of your brain using kinesiology. And I find this technique a little bit more challenging. What you can do is take a pen, and if you're right hand dominant, take it in your left hand and draw a figure eight on a piece of paper and go through that. Actually, probably is a good exercise to develop a little bit more ambidextrous skills. That's what we've got. So let's get back to our screen share and get into our information. And today we're going to talk about business success and failure, not to be doom and gloom. I like to look at it and say, let's have good information. And when we have that information, we can use it. So we want to grow our business. And if we can identify some pitfalls and some challenges that often are an obstacle or a challenge for small businesses, we're better able to move forward. And then you might say, well, who are you and why do you do this? Well, this is what I've been doing for basically my whole career. I love doing this. I love working with small businesses. And I also have another group where people join as members and we work one step at a time to put together their strategic marketing plan, or some people might just call it an action plan. It is really to get clear on all the elements that are pieces of the marketing pie and put together the plan to execute and grow the business. So identifying how much you want to grow your business, then what are we going to do to get there? And all the little pieces, because there's a lot of little pieces that go into it. And that's why we take it one step at a time and work on that. As I started out, I was first in real estate sales, and I've done a variety of things, managed a retail store and things like that. I have 2 degrees, an undergraduate and a master's degree in marketing. And at least I went into an area that I really, really love. Sometimes we go to school and we're not exactly sure what to do. And sometimes, well, there are a lot of people that have degrees that work in different areas. I've been fortunate enough to be able to pursue what I've always had an interest in. And I've also taught in 2 different colleges. I've done seminars and that kind of thing. And what I've really done is shared what I have learned one way or another. And when I learned things education-wise, when I was a student, I didn't really learn the hands-on, the how to do it in a real business. And that's what I've really learned over the years. It didn't necessarily happen overnight. When I had one of my early corporate jobs at a company called Medtronic, the world's leader in cardiovascular products, my boss said, okay, you need to put together a marketing plan for this product. And I didn't really know what that was. And if you know anything about MBA school, you know that you do tons of case studies. So I used that format, which wasn't really putting together a plan. And my boss said, well, that shows your thought process, but that's not really a plan. So he gave me a plan from one of the other product managers in the group, and I used that as my model. And I don't know where that model even came from, probably Boston Consulting Group or some big name consulting firm, because that's often what Medtronic did, was bring in some pretty high power people. So my whole thing is to work with businesses that I've done for years now and help you, because I've gone through all the time, and you could even say pain and agony in some cases, to figure out how to grow businesses. And that's been really my entire career. In fact, I started a finance company a number of years ago, and that was the best startup in company history. We were profitable the first year, repaid our startup money the first year, and things like that. So I was able to put all of this together to accomplish some key business objectives. I wanted to share with you some ideas that you can use, because I like tools. So here is the journal that, if you are interested, you can pick this up at Amazon. And a lot of people have decided to use this to keep track of their plans and their ideas. So that's something that you can do. It's $10 on Amazon. We will be re-releasing it soon in a little different format, where instead of the solid lines, they're going to be finer dots, and that will make it a little bit easier if you're a person that likes to doodle and draw. The other thing is, I like index cards. So I have some big ones that I like to use, and I buy these online because I can't find them in any retail store. If you do like the index card idea, we use this in the member group when we're working on our plans. Here's, obviously you probably can't read this, which is fine. This is something on the smaller cards, the 4x6. I would go no smaller than the 4x6. And also these are great. You can throw them in a folder, a notepad, put them in, if you're a female, put them in your purse, take these with you and have something for making notes at meetings or other things. And you know, the great thing about these is it forces you to be concise and gets it in one place. As you can see on my bigger ones, I have them clipped together here and add to them as I need. So there's another idea for tools. The other way is to get yourself some kind of a notebook. And this is, I have a collection of these that I kind of like. You can do that. You can do spirals. You can do green binder, whatever. I encourage you to find a place to get this information that we're going to be going over, get it organized. So you've got it in one place and you have good access to it. So you can just dive right in whenever you want to review something, or maybe there's 3 ideas that you get today that you want to make note of. That's where, you know, the index card can be really, really helpful. And we'll maybe use that at the end today. The other thing is, this has been a great tool for me to use and for many of my clients to use, and this is called a mind map. I actually have written a book on this that I will be releasing sometime when I get a chance to go back and do a little bit more editing on it and get the cover done. So a mind map, we'll dig into this at the end as well. A mind map is simply a way to organize your thoughts. And what is great about doing a mind map, this is the 7 dimensions for your personal goals. And you would typically put a circle or an oval, like you can see, and your name. And then there's 7 spokes. And what I was going to say is, what is great about a mind map is you can add to it somewhat randomly versus a linear sequential approach where you might have an outline and you put Roman numeral 1 and you say, okay, personal and social. And then you have ABC and you make some notes and maybe you have bullet points under A or whatever. Then you move on to the next one, and that will be your Roman numeral number 2, work and career, and you go on. Well, by the time you get over to maybe the 4th element here, all of a sudden you think of something that fits under the first point. And using a linear sequential model like an outline, most of the time we run out of room. And then we go back and we try to squeeze things in, or we draw arrows, and it turns into kind of a mess. Where mind map, you just add things as you think of them, and you don't have to worry about thinking about everything under point 1 and getting that done. You could go back and, okay, thought I had the other picture in here to show just what it looks like, but here's mine. I don't know. It's rather messy. And there's a lot of information. It would have been good to put this on a bigger piece of paper, but you can see like, let's see, that's out of focus. There you go. Well, put a building in here. The building, there's a heart, and up here I have a bird, a couple birds that represent different things. So you can draw pictures, you can, there's automated systems as well that a lot of people use. I like this because it engages your brain in a different way. Now, let's move in and talk about business success or failure. And like I said, my intent is not to look at this as a doom and gloom. My idea is let's know what the facts are so that we can be aware and do things differently, or find out what are some of the stumbling blocks. What can we do so that we don't run into that same issue? Let's take a look then at some of the statistics. And this information comes from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Other sources of information are the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's BLS. Wall Street Journal is often good, Fortune and Forbes magazine, as well as Entrepreneur. In fact, also Inc. magazine often has some good content. Let's take a look then. And we've all heard this statistic that according to the SBA, approximately 20% of small businesses fail within the first year. Okay, 20% fail the first year. Not such great stats. The failure rate increases to 50% by the 5th year. So if you can hang in there for 5 years, you got a 50-50 chance. And by the 10th year, about 70% of small businesses have closed their doors. So there's lots of reasons for this too. And let's talk about some things specifically that have been researched by a company called Statistic Brain. And they have found that the highest failure rates are often in some specific industries, and that is accommodation and food. You might call that hospitality, retail trade, and construction. And their research further found that those 3 main industries had failure rates in the first 5 years from 52 to 63%. And in the general population of small business, remember that rate was 50. So some industries have a little bit more challenges. And then Harvard Business Review did a study on tech companies and tech company startups, and they found that approximately 75%, as you can see here, of venture-backed startups fail. Now, if you know much about the venture cap industry, you know that venture cap people are usually pretty savvy, pretty highly educated. They know tons and tons generally about finance and that side of the equation. What I have found in my work with venture caps, things have changed over the years. It used to be that they mostly looked at the financial side, the pro forma and projections, and didn't spend as much time really looking at, is there a business need? What is the company really doing? What problems are they solving? That has gotten a little bit better. Anyway, in their study, they took a look at 2,000 startups, and they found that only 25% achieved a positive return on investment for their investors. And if you're a venture cap, that means 75% of them are going to be duds and only 25% are going to be winners. And you think, if these are the best people out there, the best minds at analyzing and taking a look at this, How come they don't have better percentages? Now, that's not going to be the same in every VC because there are some that are more successful. And the thing that is kind of interesting is private equity is a little bit different. If you're not familiar with that, I won't get into an explanation per se. However, with private equity, they seem to be less in or more engaged with non-tech startups. There are some that are in tech. However, there seems to be a lot that are involved with what you might call basic industry. So a lot of times, private equity has a little different thought process, and they usually work with companies on a longer term basis than a venture capitalist would be doing. So let's take a look also then, dig in a little bit more. What are some of the typical reasons that businesses fail? Well, first is insufficient market demand. So they might not have done all the research that they needed, because you need to do quite a bit of research to take a look at what really is the opportunity, what's driving that. Poor financial management. And if you're a small business leader, you know that your job, you probably got 9, 10 jobs or even more. And having a job where you know everything is virtually impossible. And yet we seem to think that that's going to be what we need to do. So poor financial management is often an area where small businesses don't have the expertise. So they can have problems there. And financial statements and forecasting, budgeting, that is all important. And if that's not your skill set, you might not be jumping on that too well. And you want to manage your cash flow, control expenses, and secure adequate financing. And again, that might not be where your expertise is. Lack of strategic planning. And it's so important to have a clear vision, mission, and values or long-term goals as well. And a SWOT is a great tool for that. We'll talk about that in another time. And setting measurable objectives. And then part of your strategic plan will be creating an actual plan. I actually do more of marketing planning, which the detail I get into is really for increasing your revenue through marketing and sales activities once we have all the basic information together. So the fourth point here, inadequate marketing and sales strategies can be another downfall. There are various marketing or distribution channels, and oftentimes that can be a challenge or confusing if you haven't been through that before. And sometimes the different strategies and tactics that are useful for small business aren't useful in bigger business. And if you come from a bigger business, you might have different ideas that aren't as appropriate for small business, even though you might have some amazing experience. Another point is ineffective leadership and management. And we really need to make sure that we are good leaders and we know how to put together our team and create a good work environment. And if you're a small business leader, you probably have a whole bunch of demands on your time and a lot of jobs, and then developing the team might be falling down your list of things to do. And another aspect can be competition, because competition is present in almost any industry, and it's often changing. And competition can come in from companies that have a physical space. It can be online. It can be through different channels of distribution, and almost anything, and could be from your own region or country, could be international. So there are lots of things to keep in mind. Some specific detail that also is from CB Insights also says some of the top reasons for failure is, first, no market need. Well, if nobody needs your product or service, that's not going to set you up too well. So we really need to be clear on what problems and pains are we solving, and how big is that opportunity. Maybe there's a couple companies, clients that need this. Well, is that going to be enough? Not likely. Running out of cash. Many times businesses do not have enough financial management to really understand what their cash needs are and how they're using the cash. And then they run out of money to keep things running. And not the right team. Again, there can be problems, as says in this overhead, that there could be team dynamics, there could be skills, the lack of skills, the wrong skills, the mismatch of people. One of the great things about EOS is getting the right people into the right positions, and that can be a challenge. And in any small business, oftentimes we have to have people who are able to multitask or be in multiple disciplines, because we can't hire enough people with specific expertise. And we probably have people that need to have a little bit of expertise in 2 to 3 different disciplines. So experience can be an issue as well. And there are a number of solutions. What I want to share are some resources, and you'll want to write these down if these are things that you want to know more about. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, they are a great resource. Talk to them, find out what they do, what offer they have for solutions for you, what kind of resources. Small Business Development Centers, I think, are terrific. SBDC, they are often referred to. Sometimes they are correlated or connected to a university or educational institution, not always. And check that out. They are usually connected to the SBA. So the SBA can probably direct you if you can't find the Small Business Development Center. SCORE is a great resource, Service Corps of Retired Executives, and they often have presentations and information that they're sharing around most areas. And also then they do some one-on-one counseling. They are not able to get into usually a lot of detail, although they can be a great resource. And then there's ACE, Active Corps of Executives, that also is under the SBA umbrella. Remember that local business associations and chambers of commerce can be a good resource, and many of them have educational components. And there are entrepreneurship and business incubators, more and more of those. And even you might find some good resources if you are in a co-working space. Keep that in mind. There are obviously online communities and forums, and right now there's about a gazillion people doing free webinars, seminars, online, boot camps, you name it. There's a lot of information out there. So take a look at that. And maybe just grab a couple other things here. There's some books that you might also want to take a look at, and I'm going to list them off. The Lean Startup, that is written by Eric Ries, R-I-E-S. That's a good book. It really walks you through process, and so it's real helpful for that. And he talks about doing something that most of us in the marketing world would call test marketing, and he comes out of the SaaS world, so they have a different lingo, and it's very similar to that of taking a solution and testing it before you move on to developing it further. The E-Myth Revisited, or even the E-Myth, why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it. That author is Michael Gerber, G-E-R-B-E-R. Another good book, the third one, Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. The author of that is Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, and that's been a very popular book. Fourth is called Scaling Up, How a Few Companies Make It and Why the Rest Don't. That author is Vern Harnish, H-A-R-N-I-S-H. And The Innovator's Dilemma, When New Technologies Call Great Firms to Fail. And that author is Clayton Christensen, C-H-R-I-S-T-E-N-S-E-N. Those would be great resources if you like to read and like to find resources that way. I can't say for sure. I think all of these probably have a podcast or something else that you could tune into. And again, other publications and websites, the Harvard Business Review, that's hbr.org, Inc., which is www.inc.com, Entrepreneur Magazine, which is www.entrepreneur.com, Forbes, which is www.forbes.com, and Fast Company, which again follows the same format, www.fastcompany.com. These resources have valuable insights, case studies, expert advice on various aspects of starting and growing a business, including how to avoid the risks that lead to business failure. Keep those in mind and use them. And you can. I wanted to then share with you what I developed years ago because of working with a lot of small businesses and doing seminars and webinars. Well, at that point, we were doing everything in person. So I guess they would be seminars. And this is my idea of taking marketing and making it 4 buckets. Now, it might be a little bit hard to discern that. Look at the bold headings at the top of the umbrella. Those are the 4 buckets. So the first bucket, and these don't necessarily go in this order, pretty much they do, but there's some movement back and forth. And when we work on this in the membership group, these are the things that we make sure we get done. So the first one is marketing opportunities, and that includes things like your segmentation variables, your target market, how you will position and how you will differentiate your business, your products and services. So the first thing, again, is look at defining the opportunity. Get real clear on what is it? What problem does your product or service solve, or your business? And that's the first dimension, the first spoke in this umbrella. The second is the marketing mix, and I call this kind of your magic or your secret formula because it's different for every business. And I work with the 7 P's. The typical 4 P's that most people are familiar with are the first 4 up there: product, price, place, and promotion. And we work through all of these. And the idea when you're working on your marketing mix is to make sure everything, and instead of product, you can put service, everything anyway, when you're doing this, reflects back on your target market, and you come up with everything in this marketing mix that best serves your customer. It solves their problems and is different than everybody else out there. The third spoke is marketing information. And you can see a number of things there: competitive intelligence, market research, buyer behavior, forecasting. Think of this as your information piece. It is so important to have good information on the customers and what's going on with them and what the problems are and exactly what they say and how they talk about all this stuff. The other thing is you need to know what's going on with the competition, and you need to know how you compare and how people think of them versus how they think of you. So obviously getting the information is absolutely essential. The last spoke that I talk about is marketing management, and that's really putting it all together. So you've done all these other pieces, and you might be going along and you might be working on some target market kinds of things, and you might think you've identified segmentation variables. Well, then you might need to jump over to marketing information and do some research. You might need to do some survey work. You might need to do some other things. You might need to go to the Census Bureau and other government statistical sources and get the research. Or, as I said, Harvard Business Review and these other sources, Statistic Brain, and those places that do research, go to them. Statistica is another place that I like to go to. And you just keep working and working, and you put together your plan on how you're going to grow the business and pull in those pieces of really looking at the other parts of the umbrella kind of as your homework. So you put it together, you get a plan, and you lay out what's going to be done, who's going to do it, when's it going to happen, and how much is it going to cost to get it done. So those are all the pieces. And as I said, in the member group, that's what we work on exclusively, is all of this. I wanted to share a couple of success stories because a lot of times a great way to learn things is to talk about a success story or a story. We learn also things that we don't want to do. The first one I want to talk about is Airbnb, and most people probably know about it. It was started in 2008, and it provides an online service for people to rent out their home, their apartment, part of their home, a room, or whatever, to travelers. And the company was started by 3 individuals, and it's kind of fun to think about why they started it. let me just double check my slide. Okay. So the three founders lived in San Francisco, and they said, boy, we need to find a way to pay our rent, because even though we're three of them, we're sharing an apartment, rent is expensive. Seems like everywhere now, and in particular in the larger cities. So that was their problem of saying, we need a way to better pay our rent. And then they started thinking, wow, there are people that come into town for conventions and that want a different experience. Maybe it's expensive to stay at the downtown hotels if they're going to a convention at, a downtown location, a convention center and so on. Maybe we can rent out our space and that will solve their problem. And, some of these people maybe want to have a different environment and don't want to be in a hotel for whatever reason. They just have a different interest. So they first started, you may not know this story, I think it's really kind of fun. They first started by renting out space in their apartment, and it was renting, the bed was an air mattress. And they developed that business. They didn't always have it going so great. Their first year, they didn't really get things going too well. And then they got into an incubator program that helped them a lot and really moved them forward. So they started in 2008, and in 2009, they got into the incubator program, which gave them a lot of support and a lot of advice and helped them because they didn't have the expertise on how to do some of the things. Let's talk about their key success factors. Their success can be attributed to several factors. One of them is that they identified an underserved market segment. Again, that was people looking for a unique and affordable accommodation, place to stay. They also utilized the power of the sharing economy and leveraging existing resources. If you don't know what the sharing or shared economy is, that's where individuals have a resource like an apartment, like a house, like a car, and they then share that and charge a fee for others to use that. That's what that really means. Third point is building a strong brand with focus on trust and safety. So they had reviews of people that were renting properties and of the renters. And the great thing about having the reviews is that was public information, so people could compare. And also then, if you were the person with the property and you got some feedback, you could make improvements, because we don't always see the issues that a customer would. So they got the feedback and they made improvements, or they could at least. The fourth point is to emphasize user reviews and feedback to ensure quality experience. That's really kind of what I was just saying, is that by getting the information and sharing it, people could really make an assessment. Another point is they implemented a user-friendly platform and leveraged technology to streamline bookings and transactions. And I have people that I'm close to that are in their 80s that are pretty doggone savvy when it comes to using their cell phone. And you know how sometimes we can say, oh, if they're this or if they're that, they just don't know how to use cell phones. Well, hey, not safe to make those kinds of assumptions, because people are using technology all the time. And again, people that I'm close to in their 80s and 90s are all over their cell phones and they know how to use technology. So don't write them off. And another point is that constantly evolving and expanding their offerings to meet customer needs was another key success factor. So they kept growing and adding things. They learned, they adjusted, they adapted, and their ability then was to really make some key improvements in the operation, which then the individual property owners were also following. Let's just sum this up and talk about the lessons that Airbnb learned. They learned first, innovation is critical in solving a problem and can disrupt entire industries. Obviously, at some point, the hotel industry was getting a little concerned. So the innovation that these three came up with disrupted that whole accommodation, hospitality industry. Secondly, second lesson is tapping into existing networks and promoting the platform through influencers can be an effective marketing strategy. And I didn't mention that by blogging and tying in with influencers, they got their word out way faster than they would have otherwise. So they tapped in and understood how to use that, or at least learned it. The third lesson learned is focusing on creating seamless user experiences and embracing feedback from users can provide a competitive edge. When they got that information, they were then able to make changes and improvements. And if you don't have that, if you're operating in a void, you can't do these things. And the last lesson is that a strong brand story can help establish an emotional connection with customers. Again, people got engaged and they either loved Airbnb or they didn't, and they participated and they shared experiences, and all of a sudden they are engaged. That is the Airbnb story. I think it's a fun one because of how they started, and most people don't even know that part of the story. Next one that I want to share some information, and again, maybe there's something where you go, oh, there's a little tidbit or a little tip in this that I can use, is a company called Slack. And this was started by 4 guys. And again, a lot of people don't know the whole story. I need to grab some of my notes here. With Slack, it was started by 4 guys, and they actually started this company in 2013 as an internal communications tool for their own company. Their own company was called Tiny Speck. And that company was initially focused on developing a multiplayer online game. And the game was called Glitch. And that was what they were working on. And they said, well, we need to have this tool so that we can keep in touch and keep on top of stuff. Well, the game didn't take off. So they decided to pivot and focus solely on Slack. That then became a valuable communication tool and was used by multiple different companies. Some of you are probably using Slack, and they credit much of their success to the freemium strategy. And we will talk about that at a later point as well. We'll talk about it a little bit here. And what got them really going was they said, there's inefficient communication channels and tools that exist in businesses, and in small businesses, you might not have a lot to work with. Bigger businesses, usually there is more. And frankly, Slack is used in a lot of pretty good sized companies. Let me just share with you their key factors for success. So there's a few different factors. First is they addressed a common pain point in the workplace. And that pain point was inefficient communication and scattered information. And probably most of us have been in situations where we're just not getting the information, or somebody has the part of it and somebody else has another part, and we need to get that all in one source. Also is that they provided a user-friendly and intuitive interface. It was fairly easy to jump in and use Slack without having to learn a lot. And it was intuitive, which just made more sense to people. Another point was key factor for success was they focused on integrations with popular business tools, and that became a central hub for productivity. And if you know much about the SaaS world or software world at all, you know that integration is huge. And whenever people are talking about some new software, it's usually the question comes up and says, well, will it integrate with what I have? Will it integrate with this? How's it going to integrate? So that is a huge plus that they had. Another key success factor was that they built a strong brand and fostered a vibrant user community. This is often the case in software SaaS type of companies and tech companies. It seems like almost a different mentality a lot of times. And another point is offering both free and paid plans. And that allowed companies to, allowed them to scale and provide wider adoption in the marketplace. So people could do free And we've all seen that model starting way back in Hotmail and AOL and Yahoo days of email. Get on free. If you need more storage space or if you need more capabilities, then you have the paid option. That's kind of the model that Slack used. And continuous product improvement based on user feedback and market demands was another key for success. Again, because they were very engaged with users, they had good information. I kind of go back to my marketing umbrella, where information is one of those key things that we really, really have to have in our business. The key lessons learned, let's sum that up for Slack, was first identifying and addressing pain points in existing processes. And when you do that, that can lead to successful products and services. So think again, if you're in your business and you're looking at solving problems for customers, what are they doing now that you can do better? And you obviously have an idea on that, most likely, if you're in business already, but keep digging in. And what other things can you do to make your product different and solve that problem? And another lesson is it is important to be adaptable in business, and pivoting from a struggling idea to a promising one can lead to success. Obviously, when they started out at Tiny Speck and they were going to do this internally and develop this great game that didn't happen, they figured out they still had a great technology and a great idea that a lot of other companies needed. Third point is that a freemium pricing model can help attract a larger user base and provide opportunities for upselling later. And we will talk about freemium and upselling and cross-selling later in the program. The fourth lesson is listening and adapting to user feedback is crucial to build a product that meets customers' needs. Again, some companies that have user groups and are SaaS oriented have been way ahead of the curve on this particular aspect, and we've been doing this for years. So I give them a lot of credit because it's important. And I just think it's great when people build in the information system into basically how they run their business. And the last one I wanted to share with you is kind of a sad story. And this is going to be sharing a little bit about Theranos. This was just sounded like such an amazing company and a great concept, started by a woman named Elizabeth Holmes. And she started a company and made a device that was supposed to be revolutionary in the blood testing technology. And the concept was that her machines could take one drop of blood and do a whole lot of diagnostic, and it would be faster, cheaper, and more accurate than the traditional methods that people were using to do that now. Now, unfortunately, and there's documentaries, this is actually, I think, a fascinating story. Elizabeth Holmes was, I suppose you could say, charismatic. She was dynamic, and she was phenomenal in getting her message out there and convincing people to invest. In fact, she had, I forget who it was, but she had one extremely well-known, savvy investor that was singing her praises and out there promoting her business and the investment opportunity. And he got completely blindsided. The problem was that the company falsely claimed that its testing machines were capable of conducting hundreds of tests using a single drop of blood and coming up with an accurate diagnosis or identifying a number of things just based on that one drop of blood. What's phenomenal is at the peak, the company was valued at over $9 billion. In fact, I forgot to mention that Airbnb is now valued over 100 billion. And I believe Slack is around 20, 25, I can't remember. But anyway, so Theranos, imagine a company that has a product that doesn't work. And it was a company worth $9 billion. In 2015, the house of cards started to fall when the Wall Street Journal put together an article exposing the inaccuracies in the claims made by the company. And that ultimately led to some regulatory scrutiny and investigation. Criminal charges were filed against the founder, Elizabeth Holmes. And in fact, this summer, she went to jail or prison. So the company did not end up doing well. And the claims were all basically fictitious. Lessons learned on that one, let's just go over that quickly, is transparency, honesty, and good corporate governance are vital in building and maintaining trust in a business. It seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? Making false claims and overestimated capabilities of a product or service can lead to devastating consequences. So yes, we need to make sure we know what our product or service is capable of and that we are accurate in the claims that we make. Regular audits and due diligence are necessary to validate the claims of a company. I was talking with a company just this year, and they were making claims that their product, which was a slight variation on an existing one, and the patent had worn out and there was no infringement on the patent, apparently, of the original product. And the new product was like, we've come up with a better version of the product and we can do this and this and this. Well, as soon as you start making those claims and you're going after the industry leader, they will be on your back and they will be suing you, and you better have your claims and all your documentation in 100% order. Coming out of the medical device world, I probably know that all too well, and Theranos is probably of interest to me because of the medical applications and coming from that industry, general industry, not hers, coming out of pacemaking and working with a lot of different med device companies. Anyway, also last lesson learned, founders and executives need to be held accountable for their actions and accuracy of their claims. And in this case, I think she's the only one going to jail. That's really just an unfortunate situation because she was so compelling and engaging that you wanted it all to work. Our process of how we're going to get through this in the next 3 months is looking at these 3 main points. So the first point is what I call get ready. The second is get set. And the third is grow. In the first pillar, we're going to talk about hidden motivators next time. We're going to talk about thinking like a millionaire. We're going to talk about getting your customers to love you. In the middle pillar, getting set, we're going to talk about target markets. We're going to talk about revenue streams that make sense and make money. And we're going to talk about upselling and cross-selling. The third pillar, we're going to talk about getting started, doing one thing and being focused on getting one thing done, how that can make a big difference and make us successful. Mastering the money, we're going to talk a little bit about what are the numbers that we need to know, and then making sure you have your team together. Now, these each have 3 main points. That doesn't mean we only have 3 sessions because some of these things take a little bit more time. Those are the areas that we're going to talk about. Now, what I wanted to do is we're going to take 5 minutes before we wrap up. So quickly, what I would like you to do is, where's my time? What I would like you to do is take a piece of paper and write down your name in the middle, and then your 7 spokes: personal and social, work and career, family, friends, spiritual, financial, mind, intellectual, and physical health. And you're going to get 5 minutes to work on these. So I'd like you to get that all ready, and we're just going to take the time to do that. Sorry. And we will take, I'm going to set my timer. So there we go. We have 5 minutes and brainstorm everything you can think of, put it down on your piece of paper. And we will be back and wrap up for the day. And here's just a little bit of an example of how, digging into one of them, I shared some ideas. And use colored markers, use whatever you got. Probably you don't have colored markers sitting at your desk. Take whatever pen and pencil. I suggest a white piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, like you have in your copier or your printer. So go for that, and we'll come back and wrap up and talk about where we're going next. You've got about 2.5 minutes left. Just keep moving as quickly as those ideas come to you. Put them in the proper spoke. Also, if you can make them a little bit on the horizontal plane, it's easier to read them. Hey, John, I got about a minute. I'm running a session. Yeah, can I call you back in about 5-10 minutes? Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, thanks. Bye. I guess you heard me on that phone call. Anyway, you've got just under a minute, 45 seconds. Put those ideas down. We'll wrap up and we'll talk about what we're doing moving forward. 30 seconds. Alrighty, let's stop right there. I hope this is going to be a good tool for you to use. I share this because it is such a great tool, and practically everybody that I share this with thinks it's helpful. One of the people in my paid group a while back, she shared it with her grandson, and he is a college student, and he started using it as a way to organize his thoughts. And again, the example you've got here is the 7 dimensions of life. And you can do this. I've got tons of examples if you need more of business, where I would put, maybe in the middle, I would put competition. And then I would put the different companies out on a spoke, and I would do something. Or I might say, my number one goal, increase revenue. And I might have 3, 4, however many spokes with different ideas. And then I would build on all of those. Keep in mind, you can use this in different ways. It's a great tool if you start using it a little bit. I have another business friend that has a very busy and active mind. So she does this every single morning and puts together her plan for the day after she's mind mapped, which I think is phenomenal. And what's cool is it's a tool that works for her. Not everything works for everybody. Here's just a quote: true knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing. And as we go through our content together, there will be things that you know. Everybody that's participating has a different background, and there will be things that you know, and then there will be some that are review, and there will be things that are new. And I encourage you to hang in there. Go play the replays if there's something as we go, because I tend to cover a lot of material a lot of times. If there's something that just was too much, go back and do the replay. There's no way to know everything that we're going to be talking about. And the idea is, if you can get one idea every time that we talk, or have some notes and go back and go, what is it that I really want to focus on? Take your index cards, write down that one idea. Maybe there's 3. Whatever, but hopefully you get one that you say, that's one I need to work on. Or your bigger index cards, whatever technique you're using. I suggest you take 5 minutes a day over the next week and go back and look at your notes. If you want to do the replay, you can even break it into segments and do a certain amount per day, or the days that you've got some time, go back and listen to some things. Now today, we did a little bit more introductory and setting the stage for how we're moving forward. So not a lot of complicated content or anything for you. I'm happy that you're here, excited to have you participate in this, and look forward to seeing you next Monday morning. And in the meantime, if there are some questions or some issues have come up, feel free to put those in the Facebook group. And I think that's about it. We will see you next time. Thanks a lot for being here. And invite your friends. If you've got friends that are small business leaders and they might be looking for some ideas on increasing revenue and profits, just learning some things, tell them to apply. Thank you. We'll see you next time.